We should be recording. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. We're just ahead of schedule here, so there might be some other folks still to join that are going to make it along. I'm hoping we do get a few more, and we certainly hit a lot more people with the recorded version of this. My name's George Milliken. I'm part of the digital skills team at Education Scotland. I've taken a lead on GamesFest for Scottish Education as part of the Scottish Games Network. Their national Games Fest throughout September, so we decided to support that for schools and nurseries and our colleagues and community learning and development and everywhere else. So really excited for this session, which is designed as a webinar to inform educators so that if you choose to take part in our National Games Jam at the end of the month, which is running the last week through September, week beginning 22nd, the last full week, just so that, again, if you're joining us live or you're watching this recording, then you've got an opportunity to just be kind of aware of what you might need to plan for, and we have tried to keep it light for resources. But I'm going to pass over to my fantastic, not technically colleagues, but I don't know, are we friends yet? I'd like to think so.
I think so.
I'm used to saying colleague, but we don't technically work together, but we've been working on stuff with games. Amanda does fantastic work, so I'm really delighted that she's offered to support us with this, and looking forward. What I keep saying, everybody will say it to you in the call again, I keep thinking that this Games Fest this year is the start of the conversation. It's the first time we've really picked up and done a big load of work on games for a long time here. But it happened quite quickly. There's loads of things planned, but it's all happened really quick. So I'm really thinking about it as the start of the conversation. And again, I hope you go away from whatever Amanda shares with you today and the points that I've made, and you think, what do I do with games going forward? And it might not even be this term. You might come back to it in January. It might be next school session. You say, do you know, we really want to have a big drive on games, and we're going to be here to support you with that at Education Scotland. So think it is the start, regardless of how many sessions you join in today. Some of you might be further, you've already started your games journey, but we are here to support. We hope to make that bigger and better going forward. So thank you. I will pass over to Amanda, and I'm going to mute myself and turn my camera off so that you don't have to look at me or listen to me in the background as well. But enjoy. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks very much, George, for that. Hi, everybody. So I am Dr. Amanda Ford, and I'm a lecturer at West College, Scotland. I'm just going to share my screen and go straight into my presentation. Yeah. So let me get this. This is where you see the computing lecturer fluffing everything up. So, mini game jam. Okay, and yeah, it's non-digital, this one. A little bit about me first, though, just a kind of brief history. I've been doing this for a while now, as you can see. So I actually ran Scotland's, probably the UK's first ever mini game jam for schools. It was 2013, and it involved 50 primary 7 kids. It was from 2 schools, and they came together at the University of West of Scotland. We just had a wee fun day at the university, making games in Scratch. Then sort of it became from the 2 schools of that, they sort of sold it to their learning communities. And then sort of kind of hit a peak. We got to about 2019, varying degrees of participation throughout the years. But 2019 was probably not the biggest event that I've run, but it was definitely the most successful in terms of reach. Because I managed we had a lot of children come to the actual college. So we had 70 kids in our games lab. But we also had folk joining in online from Aberdeenshire. And more importantly for me, because I've got family up there, we had kids from South Uist. So we had kids from Eoker Primary join. It was a group of 7 kids. The 7 primary 7s that they had actually took part online. And I know from experience, from having family in the islands, that getting opportunities like this is a lot more difficult obviously the more remote you are, the more difficult it is to get these opportunities. So by allowing folk to participate online, it really did open up the game jam to more folk and just giving it that wider reach, basically. And that's why, you know, that was the Game Jam has been recognised. It was recognised in 2020 as one of the 50 kind of top 50 UK education projects. It's obviously because of COVID and that we haven't really got back to it, but I'm looking now obviously to work with George so that we can get this back again. Okay. So what is a game jam? Right. Well, an actual game jam is something that is basically you spend maybe the traditional game jam is 48 hours. It's called Global Game Jam and it runs over a weekend at the end of January worldwide. It's a worldwide event whereby people spend, so they'll go from like 5 o'clock Friday to 5 o'clock Sunday, and they're given a theme at the start. And then obviously those 2 days to make that game, right? There's a lot of pizza involved in this as well. I do believe one year Cali Uni spent a good couple of £1,000 feeding all the participants that year. Okay, can't beat a bit of pizza. So that in a nutshell is a game jam. You might have folk coming along individually or in teams, but people will work together. Okay, so the different skill sets, whether that's art, music, designing, programming, everybody comes together to make that game. But it is all based on this theme, and you're not given that theme until the very start of the jam. Why do I call my one mini? Because obviously the original idea for my jam was essentially to fit in with the school day. I knew there was no way I'd be able to run, you know, a kind of big jam essentially over 2 days. Just not feasible for kids. Sure, a lot of parents would have loved that, but yeah, it wasn't feasible. So I thought, mini game jam, we can do it during the school day, 9:30 to 2:30. And that sort of then kind of that was my main focus for getting this game jam up and running, and it worked really well. So the normal game jam, obviously, we actually started off. So you start off the day with putting your ideas in paper. Then we would move to Scratch, okay, to make the games in Scratch. But the reason we're doing this non-digital is so that we keep it streamlined for everybody who's participating. Nothing to stop you if you wanted to then take your ideas further, going digital, but to keep the Game Jam week, to keep it as accessible as possible for every authority in the country, it's easier to have it non-digital and then everything's on paper. You've got your ideas there. You can certainly do things like prototyping. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the actual game jam itself was just that kind of day spent maybe either in the local high school, or that picture's actually from Cardonald College when we had a final event there, and so the kids were all they were all getting their ideas. They'd been given the theme and they were all getting their ideas together on paper. They had a few questions. So the questions would be like, you know, character, what's it, where is it based, things like that. So they'd done that, and they had to have their idea down on paper before you got to a computer, because as much as it was nice, the very first game jam I ran, it was a case of it was trial and error, and the first game jam didn't have a theme. And the kids were essentially just allowed to go at the computers and make their games. And I learned from that pretty quickly that that can make things difficult. So keeping this non-digital, it just makes life easy for everybody. But like I say, nothing's stopping you from then taking the ideas forward and going digital with that. Why should you participate? Okay, the benefits of participating, essentially, you know, you're bringing out creativity with the kids, okay? Team working, Team working is such a big thing. We're always talking about it here in college as well. I do HNC graded unit with my students, and it's a team working event. And again, they've got to make a game based on a theme. And it's something that they need to learn, is to work with each other, work as part of a team. They're actually put into teams. Communication skills, again, that comes with the team working, but it's always things that employers are looking for. Team working skills, communication skills, extremely important. And when I started the Game Jam, it was actually based off of my PhD research. And that I was looking at essentially teaching kids how to make games with Scratch, but looking at sort of different variables as well. So it was pair programming, because that was between 2010 and 2013. I undertook my research in a few Glasgow schools. So the resources were light in primary schools. One primary school only had 9 PCs, so we had to make do with that. So we had to kind of think of things. So team working was sort of, we did pair programming. That worked out well. We then sort of broke it down even further into splitting the pairs, obviously splitting our pairs by gender. And we had boys, we had girls, and we had mixed pairs. And from my research, the teams that made the best games were the mixed pairs. There was very sort of a contrasting results between the boys' games and the girls' games. But those who made the mixed games, the mixed pairs, they absolutely had games that looked good and worked well. And from then, I've always encouraged when we put folk into teams for the game jams. So it's teams of 4. When they're put into teams, that we have mixed teams, because I think it's really important from a young age that we are letting boys and girls work together. And it's just, it's a normal everyday activity. I know if you're a teacher and you say to the class, right, okay, we're going to put, you 2 boys and you 2 girls into a team together. I know the looks you're going to get. I know exactly. You're going to get, these, I'm not working with them. I've had it many times before, as if, they've got to work with aliens or something like that. But it does work well. And we've had a lot of good results that way. So team working definitely is the way to go for this. Teams of 4 I found to be really good. I realised that, so the essence of this, you've probably seen that picture there, 4 kids, 1 computer, and it just meant there was turn taking and, a lot of communication with each other as well. Other machines were used for a bit of research, but essentially it was just to stop folk going away and doing their own thing. They had to kind of focus, basically. No. The format, essentially, of this mini jam is you will be given a theme on the morning, so it's the 22nd. You'll be given a theme that morning, and you'll then choose how you spend the time. So it's up to you how you organise your class, building up that game idea. I would say put them into teams of 3 or 4. Sorry, and I'll give prompts. Okay, so I'm coming up with a worksheet just now full of prompts, so that the kids have got everything that they need to create a game. So you think of, where is the game based? What's the location? Where, what period in time are we talking about? That sort of stuff. You'll be given that to help. And then the kids will be able to go away, write down their ideas, but they'll also be able to sketch. If you really want to, go kind of prototyping, down the prototyping route, things that I have found useful are stuff like Lego, Play-Doh, I've done that in uni when I was teaching in uni before. We actually had a game design class, and we would use things like playing cards, and it was always a good excuse for me to bring my Lego and Play-Doh into work, so that, you know, it doesn't matter how old you are, Lego and Play-Doh, always fun if you're given that in class to work with. So, you know, you can prototype it, and it can give the kids an actual way to then think through their decisions logically before, you know, say they were going to program it. They'd be able to think through everything logically by just having, you know, even if you used your little Lego bricks as the character and then you moving it along. Okay. So it's things like that that just help. But even if you're not prototyping, even just writing things down, getting them to write a story about the game and then getting them to think of all the different parts, it gets them to actually discuss with each other, you know, and think about what does that word actually mean to them, what's this theme actually mean to them. And they can probably do a bit of research as well if you want. So it's trying to keep it as easy as possible for you, but to still get it over the week. And by the end of the week, they'll have come up with a game idea that we'll be able to look at and say, oh, you know, that is actually the game idea is there. Yeah, that represents the theme. So just, I'm going to give you something to think about, right? And so when you take part in a game jam, the game jam starts, you're given a word, or you're given, you know, like that phrase, a phrase, right? And you've then got to start thinking, right? This isn't the theme for the actual game jam. I've picked this just to explain how this works. Okay, so for me, I've picked the theme of another world. And what I want you to start doing, just think, right, in your head, what does another world mean to me? What are the words that pop up when I hear that? What does another world mean to me? And I came up with this sort of a wee chart at lunchtime here. Right. I did draw it on paper, but you wouldn't be able to read my writing. So to me, another world means things like multiverse. Yes, I've seen too many superhero movies. Okay. The multiverse. Okay. Means I can hear things like, you know, aliens, planets. Then other things in another world, daydream. Everybody daydreams. Make believe. It could be something, you know, you're making believe you're in another world. Using your imagination, again, to take you to another world. Or Earth 2. Everybody might have, you know, you might have thought of one of these things. You probably come up with other words as well. But essentially, you can then start to break this theme down, okay, into, so if I go back, right, so where is it set? Where's the actual location? Okay, I'm going to say another planet, right? So my game is about another world. It's going to be set in another planet. Period in time, right? I am going to go forward in time. So it's in the future, okay? My main character is going to be a robot, right? Because I'm looking at futuristic. I want it to be a robot. And what is the objective of this? Well, the objective of my game could be that the robot maybe has to save someone or save the planet from, you know, some other bad guys, from the bad guys. Okay. This is where the kids start to have the conversations. You get them talking to each other and think about, these are only a couple of wee prompts. I've got loads. This is just to kind of get you to start digging deep, right? And it's better to start with a couple of things at a time. So thinking about where it's set and your main character, you can then start to build up the story. And from there, you can then start to add things in. So my character, the robot, how does my robot then move about this planet? Guess the first thing you need to think of is the game a 2D game? So is it just going to be like a platform type game where you're going across the screen through levels? Or are we looking at it from a top-down perspective in the 2D? So maybe like a maze type game? Or are we going for, a 3D? Obviously, they wouldn't be making, you can make the 2Ds, they probably wouldn't be making 3D games in school, but for thinking, okay, for just having a non-digital, you can let, obviously their imagination, they can go with a 3D, but then how does your character move? So my character is going to move with the keys. So I would say, forwards, backwards, and possibly if I was to go with a 2D game and I went with top down, then it would be forwards, backwards, left and right. So you're you're going through a maze, right? The objective, obviously, to save. So you would have to get through the maze to maybe rescue someone and to save the planet from the bad guys. How do you then win the game? Right. So the objective, how do you then win the game? The other thing you would need to think about is then, okay, what the opposite of winning? How would you lose? How do you lose in the game? This would be things like, does the character have, is it health that the character has? So maybe you've got, your 3 wheel of hearts as a, kind of energy meter, or is the game based on time? So some games, take for example, my favourite game of all time, Super Mario World. If you're playing that game, there are a couple of ways in which you can obviously lose. You can lose lives, but the level also has a timer as well. So these things can be combined. But I would say to start with, you keep it simple. You just have one. So if they have health, how do you lose that health? Do you lose it from, bumping into someone in the maze? Can you collect then anything to restore your health? So these things start, like I say, they start to build up into the actual game itself, but you're starting small because you don't want to obviously overwhelm. You want to think about, one thing at a time, and then you can start to bring in other things. So we've got the main character. You bring in, obviously, do you have enemies? So do you have your non-playable characters, your NPCs? How do they come in? Are they enemies? Do you have any that are any NPCs that are good? Another game I play, Animal Crossing, they've got a lot of NPCs that are actually they're the good guys and they help you. So they help you throughout the game. So these are the sort of decisions that would have to be made throughout the game. And like I say, this then starts to build up into essentially, a nice wee document for the kids to see that, okay, right, this is what's happening, this is the characters, these are the enemies, this is what we've got to do, and this is essentially, this is how you win, this is what happens if you lose, and, do you get more chances, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's quite important to start small and then build this up. And like I say, I do have a document there that will go through these points, take you through kind of questions to ask if it's things that they haven't thought of, right? So let's essentially that is probably everything in a nutshell that I can say about the kind of non-digital jam. It works the exact same way. Game jams all work the exact same way, though you need to bring your idea. Okay, so once you're given that word, like I say here, another world, once you're given that word, it's then what is that? It's how you interpret that word. good example would be, I think it was the 2018 Jam. It was the height. It was the height of the. You just remember the fidget spinner craze, right? It was the height of the fidget spinner craze, and I decided that my word was going to be spinning. Didn't say fidget spinners, didn't say anything. I just used the word spinning because I knew that that was it was popular with the kids then, okay? I got some really interesting games from that. The one that actually won, though, was, so we did have some games with, fidget spinners involved, a lot of spinning around. There was some games with tornadoes, and the game that actually won was a game that had, funnily enough, sharks and tornadoes. I don't know if they'd actually seen Sharknado at that point. Don't know if probably too young for that. But yeah, the winning game was, sharks and tornadoes, because tornadoes spin around. And so that's how people interpret things differently. So again, it's something that they'll probably need to spend a wee bit of time just understanding what the word means to them and discussing in their team. Well, what does that word actually mean to you? So that they've got a really good kind of grip on then where it's going to take, what direction it's going to take their game. Because if you look at what I've got here, there's quite a few different directions. Okay, I talked about the robot and the planet. You could have aliens on the planet. You could have, another version of Earth, but just different. Maybe there's something different about Earth, whether it's, going backwards, or I don't know, something different, essentially. So yeah, it's about giving them time to actually look at the meaning. And I say that there's no right or wrong answers to when they're given that theme, because ultimately it's how one person interprets. It's how you interpret that word. And it would actually be interesting to know if anybody's got any different answers for this one as well. So anything that's different. What I can sort of share as well, and I'll make sure that George can send out the PowerPoint. I've put a couple of links so one's the actual website. Let's see if this will come up. Right, so I created a website. I haven't actually been on it for a while, so it's reverted back to the old kind of WordPress. So some things aren't, but there's a lot of kind of explanations here about the mini game jam, how I got there, and what happened. The other thing that I have put in there is it's a publication, right? But this one was actually written, so it was me, but it was also a head teacher. And it was him. He was the guy that actually championed the mini game jam because he seen the benefits for his school. Okay, so I know you're probably thinking, oh my God, a paper, boring academics. But this paper was also written by someone who, works in a school as well. Right. It's from his point of view too, as to how it benefited, obviously, the kids as well. So yeah, that's there for you to have a wee look through as well. And it's always good to have that side, the head teacher side of things. Like I say, he was the one that championed it, going from year one to kind of taking it forward within the learning community to start with, and then kind of moved on from there. I am going to stop talking now because I feel that's, I've been droning on forever. Does anybody have any questions?
Firstly, Amanda, I just want to say thank you. And I'm just going to just stop the recording here for anybody that's here or watching it recorded. So thanks very much for that. That was very informative. And we will take some questions in the live bit. But give me a wee second to stop recording, and then we can do some questions.